Minister, it's been busy already for you here, although it's day one at ITB, but you've been working pre that. How's ITB for Jamaica?
Well, ITB this year is bigger and more exciting. It also brings a wider perspective on what we are purposing to do, because we have this major international global conference that Jamaica will host in collaboration with the UNWTO and the World Bank. And we're using ITB as a launching pad for this conference. Yesterday, the Secretary General of the UNWTO, Dr. Rifai, and myself had a press briefing announcing the first major arrangement for the conference, and that is the partnership now of the World Bank. So the conference will be called the International Year for Tourism, but the theme will be job creation and inclusive growth, partnerships for sustainable tourism.
The involvement of the World Bank Group, you're saying, it means quite a lot, doesn't it?
It does, because what it brings to the conference content is the presence of financing and donor agencies as well as funding agencies for sustainable tourism development projects. It also brings the commercial side of tourism to interface with the policy side. And so the public-private partnership that this will encourage will see countries bringing projects to be discussed at this conference and possibly funded while they are there at the conference. So this is a game changer, and it's a brand new way of which conference relations can be developed and conference content can be divined. And Jamaica is setting the pace in this regard. So we think that the UNWTO, the World Bank, Chemonics, George Washington University, CTO, CHTA are all major collaborators that are going to make this conference a one-of-a-kind and a must for the 157 countries of the world that are involved in tourism and utilizing this tremendous economic activity as a centerpiece for their own growth and development.
Just stay a little while on the World Bank Group's and participation and involvement in there. A lot of our countries in the Caribbean are small, not just in size and population, but really small tourism countries. What does the involvement of the World Bank Group in this conference mean for these Caribbean countries?
Okay, now, I'm not blowing my own horns, but I believe we've been able, because we are from the Caribbean and we're small countries, we've been able to get a narrative inserted in the statements flowing from the UNWTO of a small, medium tourism enterprise category. And these small, medium tourism enterprises are more in countries like ours in the Caribbean and all across the world than they are in the big metropolitan centers. And the tendency is for these small entities to be forgotten in the allocation of resources for development. Well, this conference is going to focus on small and medium entities as well, and how we can access funding from multilaterals such as the World Bank. And I think this is going to make the conference of particular significance to smaller tourism entities across the world. In the case of us in the Caribbean, half a day, the first day of the conference will be focused totally on Caribbean futures in tourism. And we're going to be encouraging Caribbean states to bring projects that they want to bring to the attention of these multilateral bodies that will be gathered there. There will be at least 2 discrete opportunities by way of panel discussions and workshops where small entities, small countries like ours can bring projects to the World Bank and its agencies for consideration.
We've been talking about the conference. We haven't quite said what the conference is. It is that UNWTO conference in Jamaica as part of the UN Year of Sustainable Tourism Development, isn't it, coming to an end? Yeah?
Yes, the UN declared 2017 as the International Year for Sustainable Tourism for Development. And it's important for development. And so in the context of that, the private sector and the public sector arm of the UNWTO decided to have an international, a global conference that would focus on public-private partnerships, job creation and inclusive growth. And Jamaica became that venue for it. We are excited about that prospect because we think that it is not just a Jamaica location, but it's a Caribbean location. And it is therefore a Caribbean achievement that we will be the center of the world for those 2 days as we focus on development issues and how funding arrangements can be put in place to enable sustainable development of tourism.
It must mean a lot, doesn't it, for Jamaica to host a conference like this? You've mentioned over 150 countries, a lot more that are part of the UNWTO. Must be a proud moment for Jamaica and the Caribbean, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we really want to not only feel that pride now, but we want to glory in the wonderful values of the Caribbean. I mean, the Caribbean represents today the most significant tourism segment in the world. And I say that without equivocation. Ask the cruise lines, they'll tell you it's the strongest, richest, and most lucrative area for warm weather cruise activity in the world. And the Caribbean is a center of peace and tranquility. And that's a big offering for global tourism because we are challenged today by safety and security issues. And the search of the new traveler is for seamlessness, and the Caribbean has that. So we want to show the world what safety, security, and seamlessness means in a wonderful archipelago of islands called the Caribbean.
But there is a cost, and there has been some concern raised about what it's costing Jamaica to host this conference.
Yes, of course. You know, there are always discussions of that. We are looking at cost in a broader sense than the immediate dollar implications, because the value that this conference will bring to the Caribbean and Jamaica is inestimable. There's no way we'll be able to even effectively measure the impressions that will come from this conference globally. When we go to an Olympic game, for example, and we boast of perhaps 1 million impressions across the globe, when we come to a conference that brings 150 countries to us and brings over 500 private sector entities to us and bring the world's largest donor organizations to us, the value for that continues to abide with us years and years after the event is over. But out of this conference will also come a declaration called the Montego Bay Declaration on Sustainability and Public-Private Partnership. This will provide a blueprint for future interactions and best practices across the globe. So the impact is not about $1 million US, because $1 million US is consumed by one advertising buy on a single media. So if I were an opposition spokesman, I wouldn't be focusing on that. I would be focusing on how do we utilize this great opportunity to leverage Jamaica's presence in global tourism and to create a future that we all can know is sustainable and reliable.
Was that a dig at your good friend, the Shadow Minister of Tourism?
Absolutely not. It's really a reflection of how thinking does happen in our space, and to discourage those who are thinking that way.